How do you steward your money in a wealth-obsessed world as a Christian today? Is it about managing every single dollar, or is it about trusting God with everything that you earn? Today, we're joined by Nick Manson as he shares what it looks like to live as a Christian, faithfully steward our money. It's a raw conversation. You're going to want to stick around. Welcome to the UPD podcast,
designed to point men towards Jesus.
Real life, real talk. Join us. I'm Andy Lamb.
I'm Jonny Hanson.
This is the UPD podcast.
Hey friends, thank you so much for joining us today on Untrained Philosophical Discussionists. As you can see, we're once again here in the interview studio, and my name's Jonny Hanson. That's my good buddy Andy Lamb, and we have a special guest. He's a great friend of ours. We've known him for a long time. I'm going to read his bio, and then we're gonna chat here about his life, his upbringing, and he's a financial guy, so he's got some financial secrets to unlock. Nick Manson was born in Hollywood, Florida, a first-generation American with a Scottish father and an Italian Catholic mother. Raised with two sisters in a volatile household, his mom a Christmas and Easter Catholic, his dad an agnostic from a Jewish background, Nick was baptized and firm for tradition. His dad taught him early, trust only family because others will let you down. Nick's early years revolved around sports, women, and partying. He earned a baseball scholarship to Rollins College, graduating with a mathematics degree. There, he met his future wife. After college, he pursued a second bachelor's in structural engineering at UCF. In 2009, he married, and they welcomed two children, now 14 and 12. In 2010, a college roommate's apologetics Bible study led Nick to embrace Christianity, and he began attending Grace Church. Shout out to Grace Church. In 2011, he left engineering for finance, earning 3 licenses. He joined Fortive in 2013 and became a certified financial planner in 2021. Initially, Nick's giving was prideful, writing big year-end checks for recognition. A 2018 conversation with Andy on a North Carolina porch challenged him to trust God with money, sparking a lifelong struggle to surrender control. Nick's gritty nature pushes him to impress God with deeds, but trusting an invisible God remains his biggest challenge. Join us as Nick shares his journey of faith and resilience. Everybody, welcome our good friend Nick Manson. Nick, how are you?
What's up, guys? Thanks for having me. Not gonna lie, a little nervous about the podcast.
You should be. But this is a confrontation. We're here to confront you with some things.
Millions of people all over the world are going to see you right now looking
and they're going to judge
harshly.
Especially those in Finland.
Yeah,
Hova Paiva.
Hey.
We learned how to say hi in Finnish, so That's how you say hello in Finnish. For our Finland listeners.
Yeah.
It's really important.
So welcome. We've been on this financial series, and in the first episode, we talked about how to be a Christian business leader or how to represent Christ well in the business world and kind of what we feel like that looks like. We want that to be part of the components today, with your business and how you represent Christ there. We're also going to go through kind of your story, your growing up, as we kind of did there in the bio, but I think we'll kind of pick some sections here that have common interest for us and kind of dig into that. And then finally, we want to talk about stewarding your resources well in the household, what that looks like. We also want to jump into, if you're starting from nothing like Andy and I did, what does it look like to build? And when do we need a guy like you to step in and help us? Is it right away? Are there some mile markers to hit? And then finally, what does it look like to tithe? What does tithing look like to you? As you kind of stated there, you have some struggles with it. I'm familiar with that.
As most do.
And then, what does it look like to move yourself towards retirement? What are some of these markers people should be looking for as they go through life, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years old and kind of these things. So we'll go through that near the end of the podcast. But kind of starting it today, you grew up both parents were immigrants.
My father was. My mother was born in the States.
Okay.
But my father was born in Scotland and came over here as a young boy with nothing, just with a few suitcases with his parents. And knew not much, but was able to do okay and
How old
become.
was he when he came over?
He was in his teenage years.
Okay.
I remember he died probably about 10 years ago now, and I remember seeing pictures of his immigration with the long hair just coming over. And he actually ran away from home not too long after he came to the States to Florida. He immigrated to New York and ran away from home and just kind of was a misfit. I know he and his father had a rough relationship. He would tell me stories about them fist fighting in the backyard.
Mm.
And
And he's just a teenager at this time?
yeah, just a teenager.
Okay.
But really, really rough. Just he would tell me stories about leaving school. He was in a predominantly black neighborhood, and leaving school, he would constantly just have to fight his way out of school. And his father would show up in the parking lot and help him fight other kids and keep them off him. So he had a rough childhood. So when I talk about the things that maybe he did wrongly as a kid, I can't blame him. He really knew no better. He wanted a better life for me, but just didn't know. Didn't have the wisdom to really to help as he best he could.
And
So, how old was your dad when he ran away from home?
He was about 18.
And so he ran away from New York and came to Florida.
Correct.
Knew nobody, had nothing.
Nothing.
Wow.
He was involved in gangs and other things that just were not good. And I think he ran away from that, but also just his family. It was my grandfather, his dad, was a really rough guy, heavy drinker.
Did you ever meet him?
Yeah. Oh yeah. He and my dad ended up reconciling their relationship. My grandfather moved down and they ended up having a good relationship. And I remember my dad helping my grandfather in the end of his life. Just he had to have a liver transplant because he was an alcoholic. So my dad stayed away from alcohol, and alcohol wasn't a big thing in our house because of that. But having an alcoholic father caused a lot of just dysfunction and just chaos in his household, which is I think a lot of the reason why he ran away down here. And unfortunately, I wasn't able to have a lot of these conversations with him before he died. I just wasn't as interested as I am now in his kind of life story. So it's sad that I'll never know a lot of the details behind it all. But yeah, he had a rough childhood.
Was he a private guy, or would he have shared those details with you?
He was very private. He lacked emotions. I remember ever seeing him cry as a kid once. He thought emotions were a sign of weakness.
did he say that?
Yeah. And he would teach me that as soon as you are vulnerable or show someone some sort of emotions, they'll use that to take advantage of you. And just don't be vulnerable with people and show emotions, because it's a sign of weakness.
What was the circumstances around the one time you did see him upset?
It's kind of a stupid story, but we had a garage door and he hit it, came inside, and couple hours later realized my cat had tried to get under and died. And he felt guilty, like it was his fault, and having to tell us, his kids, that he had killed our cat. So it's kind of a ridiculous story to see him cry for the first time.
I think it's fascinating.
Yeah.
All these other circumstances of his life that, the ups and downs of anything that goes into living a life where gladness or sadness can come into play. And then this cat dies accidentally and it triggers some sort of emotion with him. It's like there's something, if I was a psychologist, I bet there's some sort of deep rooting to why that produced tears when many other things that we would assume didn't.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And
it's interesting, actually.
Towards the end of his life, he was sick for a couple years towards the end of his life. And I remember, and to this day, I still don't know if he ended up accepting Christ. But I would say the last 6 months of his life, I I made it my duty and job to really try to open his heart to Christ and to really just knock down that wall.
How'd you do that?
I just was relentless.
What does that look like?
Anytime, so they lived in South Florida, we're in Orlando. But they would come up and see our kids probably once a month.
Him and your mom.
Him and my mom, yeah. And every time they would come up, I would talk to him about God and just like ask him. I was like, "Aren't you tired? Aren't you tired of having this wall up and trying to do everything and acting tough and I got a little bit from him, but I just couldn't break him enough. There was some moments in his last few days where I feel like he potentially like had that breaking point, seeing death staring him in the face and just probably wondering what's going to happen. So I have hope that maybe he did accept Christ, and I had some weird things happen that give me maybe some hope, but again, I don't know. But he was hard until the end days of his life. And anyone I grew up with knew that he was just like the tough guy. And that was this persona that he just loved to put on. But it did teach me a lot of things, like deeply ingrained certain ways of thinking and living that like I have to overcome as an adult.
Can you give some examples of those?
Yeah, I mean, just recently, I always thought being sensitive or vulnerable was just like this mental weakness. And about 6 months ago or so, I started going to counseling,
Good
which,
for you, man.
well, yeah, which was new for me. It was a big step just because I'm someone that like feels like I can overcome anything if I just push hard enough. Um, but man, I felt like I wanted more out of my marriage, out of life, and I didn't know where to go to get that. So just going to counseling, and I honestly hate blaming your childhood for things that you do as an adult. I feel like it was just an excuse, but there are some like deep ingrained things that happen to you that cause you to live a certain way, and it's just the truth. Can you overcome them? Sure. But some of those things are just deep automatic things that you do. One was not really knowing how to love well. Um, I was the way I earned. I always felt like I had to earn love
Gosh, I'm
from my
very
dad.
familiar with that, buddy.
Yeah. By accomplishing things in sports and school and just achieving things would make me feel his love, because he was not one to show affection at all.
Did he ever say "I love you" to you?
As a child, I don't remember. My mom would probably disagree. I'm like, oh, your father always told you he loved you, but
Sure.
I don't ever recall him telling me he loved me. I remember him being very pleased with me if I would do well in baseball or get good grades. But as soon as those things didn't happen, I would feel like he didn't love me, or he was pushing me away. And I have a son now who's 12 and is in sports, and I found myself doing the same things my dad was doing to me towards him. So that's a big topic that I approached with my counselor as well. Like I want to have the best relationship possible with my kids and my wife. Like you're given one wife in this world. And I want to make the most of it. So and try to avoid those mistakes and do well. So that's been a big topic, but like just those deeply ingrained things you learned as a kid, like those are your instinctual ways of doing things unless you teach yourself a different way.
Yeah.
So it's been a struggle for sure. Some of those things that my father taught me, a biggest one being self-reliance. I mean, becoming a believer is everything opposed to self-reliance. It's surrendering
Submission.
everything.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a struggle that I continue with my faith walk, just trying to surrender and not being reliant on myself or what I can do to overcome, and relying that there is a story God's writing that I am a part of, but I don't have as much control as I think I have.
Yeah. Bill Burr has this, these jokes about Gen Xers, how we don't have trauma. It's like, we don't know what trauma is. We just stuff that crap down. We don't have to talk about it or deal with it. But there is a reality of like the traumatic things that we go through when we're younger that form the way we think about the world and we think about people and how we respond to it. And so trauma is a real thing. We've talked about it in here before. We also think sometimes it gets overused.
Mhm.
Like I can lean too much on it and, I can make an excuse for my life and I am this way because of the things that happened to me. And there's a part to that. But there is also a piece of that where I have to be able to deal with that. So what you're doing right now is beautiful. I want to be a better dad and I want to be a better father. And so to do that, I'm going to make sacrifices and go to counseling and deal with these issues in my life so that I can be a better person for them or be the father that I need to be for them. And I think it's beautiful that you do that, man.
Yeah.
We believe that we're eternal creatures and that Christ's kingdom goes on forever. So as I'm approaching this life, I'm trying to, as it really sticks out to me that you say you want to be a better dad and you want to be a better husband. And it's not just so that you get along better in the family, ultimately. It's so that the generations that
Oh, it's great.
follow
It's
you
great.
will also see the fruits of your efforts and live that way too. And you watch this as it becomes like the triangle of these people throughout the generations that submit themselves to Christ for that better life. And you watch the kingdom grow. And I mean, what you're doing today by saying, I'm not a victim, things happened, but I'm going to capture them. I'm going to figure out what they are. I'm going to have Christ come in and overcome these things so that your kingdom, God, can be a greater kingdom for this effort. It's like, that's noble and honorable. And I think C.S. Lewis talks about anger at one point in time. And shout out to Mike. He talks about anger and how if you might have a certain amount of anger right now in this life, but if we are eternal creatures and we were to look at that anger on a scale, we would see that if we're eternal and it's on an upward trajectory, as I felt like I was in my life at 40 something, it's like my anger was becoming more somehow accumulative.
Mhm.
And where does that go to? And then if God is who he says he is, which is a perfect, loving, his place is of perfect love, and I have all this anger in me and I'm never dealing with it, then how am I to go be with him in eternity? This has to be something that's dealt with here so that we can nip that thing, get it back on have it cleared off. And that's what Christ does somehow.
Mhm.
And gives us this opportunity at a different life completely,
Mm.
And I mean, you're, again, just to like honor this decision that you made recently, 6 months ago. I mean, it's just phenomenal, man. We talk about it all the time here, and you maybe have heard us talk about it, which is counseling's very important. If you have trauma, you should go seek a counselor. I think what you did is inspirational, man. I think it's so awesome. I've spoken about it here before. My wife and I have done counseling. Andy and his wife have done counseling. There's a time and a place for it, and it can be individual, it can be couples, it can be whatever it needs to be. But if there's something in your heart that's lacking, like Grace Church has an excellent counseling center. And I'm sure many other churches do too. That just happens to be the one that I know about. And it's like, we just want to always put that out there to you people that are listening too. It's like, if you have something that you think is stifling your growth or is stifling your happiness or stifling who you could be, reach out to somebody. There's nothing small about that. It is noble for you to do that. It's honorable, and it honors the people that will benefit from it.
That's real good,
I
man.
want to make that clear.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for sharing that. How's mom? What's mom like in this environment? Like, you're saying dad's unemotional, unreachable. How does a woman then relate to that?
Yeah, so my dad was a very angry person as well. And I saw him never physically abused my mom, but mentally and verbally quite often. So my mom was just a very submissive, um, just do anything for my dad.
She comes in the room and goes, he didn't mean that. He
Yeah,
loves you.
she had to walk on eggshells like her whole life, because she never knew when he was going to blow up or get angry. So she would protect us from him sometimes, and
How does she do that?
she was the more sensitive, gentle, and if he blew up at us, or he would physically hit us as kids, whether it was spankings or whatever, and after that would happen, she would come in the room and calm us down, and try to explain to us why he did what he did. And so she would try to protect us, but again, she was she's a very emotional person as well. So where I think I got my emotions from when they come out. But
They come out often, which is great, man. I love it, man. I love it.
Yeah, nothing like seeing a grown man cry,
It happens.
It's healthy, man.
You
Yeah.
moved.
Yeah. So she was loving, but she did what she could. She had a volatile household too. Her father died when she was a young girl, and so she had it rough. And I think my parents did the best they could. I mean, they wanted the best and most for me and my two sisters, but they just lacked a lot of knowledge and wisdom and resources to do any better. So I can't say I had a bad childhood. There are things that I wish were different, but they did the best they could.
But sometimes I think we wish they were different, but I also look at it as sometimes as the formation of who you are today as well, though. So there is an aspect of us going through hard things that allows us to take those hard things and utilize them to help benefit other people, because it makes you empathetic very often for what other people are going through, because it resonates with you and you can understand it. The problem is that a lot of people don't deal with it, and they just become that, and they just perpetuate it. And so the thing that Jonny said that I thought was so great is you're being a generational changer. You're teaching your son how to live as a Christian man in this world, and you're breaking that cycle of what your dad saw, what his dad saw, probably what his dad saw, probably what his dad saw, because we see that generation. I had it in my home, he had it in his. And so when we're generational changers like that, that's where the impact for the kingdom has its most effect. So I think there's a benefit sometimes when we go through it, but if we use it the right way is where it becomes beneficial.
Yeah. And counseling's been a huge help with that. Like, I don't think it's good to just harp on all the negatives of counseling, but going to counseling and creating a game plan for how to make those changes, and starting to see the changes happen, man, that's so life-giving to know that, like, after a few months of going to counseling, I bring my wife in and she's like, I see a change.
Yeah.
And you're like, praise God. Like,
Yeah.
yes.
Yep.
Like, that's why I'm doing this. Like, I want to be better for you. And she was seeing the anger come out in me, and
Of course.
and God, it's when you hear that from your wife, it's a wake-up call.
Yeah, it hurts.
Yeah, it hurts when she's like, yeah, like, I need to walk on eggshells. And I'm like, around me? And she's like, yeah.
And I feel like I'm not like that. So what do you it's kind of startling the first
Yeah.
time you hear it.
Yeah, but obviously it's coming from somewhere. She obviously feels that way.
Sure.
So,
Well, good on you to validate that too,
Mhm.
and take the initiative once again.
Well, take ownership.
Right.
Yep.
Because, other guys can hear that and go, it's just who I am. You don't understand. And start excuse making ultimately, and not take responsibility for it, make no change for it. And then the cycle continues. And then you get the same outcome as what you've seen when you were a kid growing up. And it's just that taking that opportunity, hearing it for what it truly is. It hurts. It's painful when you hear something like that. I've heard it. And I reacted like you did.
Yeah.
What can we do to fix this? I don't want to be that way. I don't ever want you to see me that way. Ugh,
Mm-hmm.
kind of sick about it.
Yeah.
But then making the change and having the results be a positive, and having, your wife point that out to you, or anybody else around you point it out to you and go, man, you really just, it's a big change on you. It feels good.
Yep.
And yeah, it is. Praise God for that, because obviously he's the one that gave you the inspiration. I think without God, I don't make positive changes in my life,
Right.
No.
especially at this age.
Yep.
You just kind of dig your heels in a little deeper.
Yep.
Mhm.
Now, this is your household. Mom's doing this. Dad's angry. Mom's making excuses, compassionate excuses. How do you do in school?
School was kind of an outlet for me.
Yeah.
It was a big part of the day where you go to school. You're probably at school longer than you're at home. I was always fortunately really good at school. It just came easy to me. And I excelled pretty well at school, which again causes some problems in school because I was athletic, but I was also in the advanced classes. So I wasn't in the greatest of areas, so I would get picked on sometimes for being smart or taking school seriously. But it was
Monkeys in a barrel.
Yeah.
But again, it was something that I could accomplish to make my dad pleased with me.
Yeah.
So I would get straight A's all the way through until high school. It just was, it came easy to me, and to this day, like there was exams I had to take to get into finance, and it was just, I didn't have to study very much. It just came easy to me. So very fortunate for that, for school.
So back to that baseball thing too. When did you realize that maybe there was, because a lot of guys play sports in school and high school and such, and you kind of whittle it down to one sport. Most people do by 9th or 10th grade, the one sport that they're really dedicated to, and they'll maybe have two. When did you think you had a better shot at baseball that might take you to the collegiate level?
Probably high school.
Mhm. Who told you that? Did anybody lean in and say, hey man, Nick, you're pretty good at this?
So there was some private schools down in South Florida that had very good athletics and baseball teams. And I happened to go to one specifically for baseball. So I honestly, looking back on it, I think I looked at baseball as my way out, where it was going to get me a college scholarship because my parents couldn't afford college.
How'd they afford the private school?
My dad owned a pest control company.
Okay.
And he bartered with
Great. Brilliant.
the school where he would do their pest control, and I can go there for free.
That's fantastic. I love that.
Yeah. So he found a way, which was great.
Yeah.
But
he's a hustler from the
Yeah.
streets.
From the streets, man.
yeah, exactly. I mean, I grew up in a mobile home, and when I was 5, my parents bought their first house, of which my mom still lives in, for like $67,000.
Mhm.
So he started a pest control company. He was a one-man band, and he found ways.
That's great.
I never felt like we went without, but we definitely were middle lower class. But I didn't know that. I didn't know any better.
Mhm.
Like this was my world that I lived in.
Well, if you're a private school, you're probably around a lot of wealthy kids.
Until I went to private school. And
Yeah,
that's
that's when it'll start.
it was the eye opener of wow. Like,
yeah, there's levels.
There's and just a simple thing like manners. Like I was never taught like manners as a kid because we didn't go out to eat very often. So going to a private school and engaging with these people from different economic backgrounds was an eye opener for me. And I feel like I do a good job of kind of looking around and evaluating and learning and
Chameleonic.
yeah. So that was an eye opener for me to kind of see all these people that were different than all the people I grew up with.
And figuring out how to fit in.
Exactly.
Did you fit in or did you struggle with that?
I fit in. It didn't take me long. I mean,
Sports is a universal language, so it's if you're good at sports, it usually
sports and girlfriends.
Yeah.
I had a couple girlfriends in high school that their families were pretty wealthy. So just learning from their families and honestly what a normal household looks like.
Yeah.
Was
That's a big
eye-opening.
help.
Yeah.
Was that the private school? Was it a Christian school or was it just?
It was a Catholic school.
Okay.
For 2 years, and then I transferred to another school specifically for baseball, another private school, but it was not a Christian school.
When you transferred to the other school, you said specifically for baseball, did they seek you out or did you seek out that school?
They seeked me out. I had a friend that was going there, and he told the coach about me, and they wanted me to transfer. I did get in trouble in my first school, so I didn't get forced out, but there were some things that happened that caused me to have the head coach of the baseball team, to have a negative view of me. So I felt like it was probably best anyways to transfer out.
So you played 2 more years there at that private school, and then did you start to get scholarship offers after that, or did you seek out?
Yeah, I had a few offers. One out of FAU down in South Florida. Purdue was looking at me. And then again,
What position did you play?
third base.
Okay.
And I was the closer, the pitcher. But again, a guy I had played high school with ended up going to Rollins, and he told the coach about me, and which then allowed them to show some interest in me. I was good, but man, I was just gritty. Like I would find a way to figure it out. So like my natural talents weren't the best, but I was definitely gritty.
One of the gifts your dad taught you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's very true.
Mm-hmm.
So they found me. They had a tryout. I went up there with another buddy of mine, tried out. My other buddy was actually better than me at baseball, but he didn't have the grades to get into Rollins. I fortunately had the grades. So they liked what they saw, and they offered me, and that's where I went. And if anyone knows about Rollins College, it's a private, uber wealthy school.
Oh yeah.
It's very expensive to go there. So really, I could look back, and baseball was kind of my way out of this lower economic life, and just surrounding myself with people of more means.
Yeah.
Which definitely helped me in the future.
Sure. What's dad receiving this as? He's not college educated.
No, but his goal was for me always to go to college.
Sure.
And he was my biggest supporter.
Oh.
I mean, they lived 3 hours away, and we would have a Tuesday midweek game. Him and my mom would drive up, watch the game, and then drive back. And then every weekend they'd come up, and they didn't have money to stay at hotels. So they would come up, watch a doubleheader on the weekend, do my laundry, do some food shopping for me, and then drive home.
Wow.
But they for 4 years, they were committed to watching me play college baseball, which was an awesome feeling. And honestly, I think I took it for granted playing. I had way other things on my mind than being thankful that my parents were at every one of my college games. So I wasn't as thankful as I probably should have been. But I think my mom knows how I feel now.
Yeah.
What order are you in the order of children?
I'm the middle child.
Okay.
Kind of, sort of. My mom actually was married prior to my dad, of which I didn't know this until I was probably a teenager. And she had my older sister with her first husband. But they divorced, and she met my dad and had me. And I had always thought my older sister was from my mom and dad, until I was about a teenager, looking through some photo albums from my parents' cupboard and realizing that she had a different last name.
Wow.
What did you confront her with this?
No, not at the time.
Yeah.
We weren't able to speak freely really in my house. Like there was a lot, I feel like there was a lot of secrets that we just didn't feel comfortable bringing up hard things because it might throw a wrench in thing and my dad might go off the handle.
Okay.
So I knew it. I don't recall when my sister found out. So yeah, I consider myself a middle child, but my older sister did come from another husband.
My biological father set up franchises. He's got an older daughter that's older than me, though I'm the oldest in our household. So I do have an older sister. Shout out to Sean. I have a brother Sean and a sister Sean. Hey.
They like the name Sean.
Well, yeah. And I have, and he set up a couple other kids there after the fact too. So yeah, I also did not know about these people. I didn't know about my older sister till I was probably 19 or 20. And then I didn't even know about youngest siblings until 28. It's like, what is this? People did things differently in the previous generations.
That was just your normal, though.
I guess.
Not realizing it, of how.
And then hearing it and just kind of going like, oh, okay. And I not unlike yourself, I didn't go make a bunch of, what is this? Are you crazy? I never made any confrontations. I was like, oh, okay, well, we should probably meet sometime. And we did, and it was cool and whatever.
Yeah, there was a level of respect you have for your parents to not call them out on something.
But now as an adult of this age, by the way, I'm older than my parents were. And I'm going like, what are you guys, totally nuts?
Yeah.
Frequently? I think that and say it on a podcast. Sorry. Sidebar. Back to the story.
So you did 4 years of baseball.
Yep.
And then baseball gets done.
You meet your wife there.
Yeah. The story of meeting my wife is silly and stupid. So the baseball players would go out and drink and party 5 nights a week.
Shocking.
And like blackout drinking every night. So one evening we get home from the bars at 2-3 in the morning, and we get the bright idea that, hey, let's go knock on people's dorm room doors, and when they open them, shoot them with water guns. Super cool, fun. You want to get shot with a water gun at 3 in the morning by some drunk guys. So we knock on a few people's doors, squirt them, haha, funny. And then we knock on a door and opens this pretty girl. And I'm like, whoa. And immediately, instead of squirting, you're like, how can I come in your room? Please bring me in. Obviously, she was pissed. But that was my first interaction with my wife. My wife also went to bars pretty frequently. So from that point forward, I would see her out at bars, and we would hang out and party, but I would never say we had a relationship until after college. I didn't date my wife, even though I was with her physically in college. I didn't date her at all. Like, we never went out on a date. It was just purely going out and having fun and a physical relationship.
Sure.
So you leave Rollins after 4 years, decide to go to UCF for more schooling after that?
Yeah, so Rollins had a 3-2 program where you go to Rollins for 3 years and you can go to another school for 2 to get an engineering degree. I always knew I wanted to be an engineer. I don't know why. It was just the problem solving that like excited me and creating stuff. But obviously, if you left after 3 years, you would not be able to play baseball your senior year. So I had to pick a major that had the most courses in common, and it was either math or physics. So I went the math route, and to this day, I still don't understand how I got through such a hard degree doing what I was doing in college. And then right after I graduated from Rollins, I applied for UCF because they had an engineering program there, which took me about 1.5 years of additional schooling to become an engineer. Yep.
So you leave UCF. You have what kind of engineering were you in?
Structural.
Okay.
I actually, I thought I wanted to be an aeronautical engineer, and I took one course, and I looked around, and I was like, I mean, nothing against aerospace engineers, but there's a stereotype. And I was like, if I have to work my whole career with this type of
Nerd.
he said it. With this
I
type
know
of
some.
person, it'll be hard. Like, I'm not like an extroverted person, but the aerospace engineer type of person is
Star Trek.
is just different.
Star Trek conventions on the weekends, not hanging out at the bars and partying
Comic-Con.
with chicks.
Yeah.
Comic-Con.
So one class of
No
that,
offense.
I
No offense.
I quickly shifted over to engineering. But after Rollins, I immediately got a job. And when I was at Rollins, I couldn't have a job, but my scholarship was enough to pay for my housing and going out. But I needed money to pay for my apartment and be able to do things after Rollins. So I immediately got a job at engineering firms. And I remember, man, resilience is such a good thing my dad taught me, because I opened up the yellow pages and just went to the engineering section
Mm-hmm.
and just started calling all the local companies.
What's the yellow pages?
For our younger demographic.
Yeah, the yellow pages is a place where all businesses.
It was a big book
Yep.
made of paper, thin paper,
yeah, big
yellow thin paper with black writing, and you could look up different titles of things like engineering, and you go to E, and then you'd find engineering, and then you'd find all the companies that listed themselves as engineering. Is that about it?
Yep,
All
that's
right.
it.
Just want to clarify.
Back when we had phone books.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Golly.
yep. So I just started calling them, and I was like, just trying to get an internship, and I finally
Paid internship?
Yeah, I finally got one to bite, and so I was going to school and then working part-time, and yeah, that was my life.
And you did that for a year and a half.
Did that for a year and a half.
Where's
and
your wife in this time? She's still in school over at Rollins?
She graduated the same year I did, and then I would say that's when we really started to take our relationship more seriously.
Mm.
I honestly never thought she would be my wife during the college days, and my senior year of college, I actually even though we weren't in a real relationship, I broke things off with her and was just like, let's just go do our separate things. I'd rather not see you anymore. And I think it was me testing whether or not I really had feelings for her. And a couple months later, I came crawling back. And I remember being up on a rooftop at a party and just telling her that I was sorry. And I really want to try to see if things can go further. And this was my senior year. So I would say after my senior year was when we really started to take our relationship more seriously. We were living apart, but we would see each other every day.
Mm-hmm.
And
In social circles and such.
correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You actually started dating at that point.
I would say we were dating. I met her parents, and it was more of a real relationship after college.
Nice. So you're the UCF year and a half.
What year is this?
This was 2006 and 7.
Okay.
I would say.
So you leave UCF, you go now to this engineering firm that you were working at. Now, are you there full time, or did you get a full time job at a different engineering company? What'd you do
Yep.
from
So
there?
the first year of my internship, I did it with one firm, and then the next year I moved to a different engineering firm, of which when I graduated, they hired me full time. And I remember that first offer I got, seeing the amount of money I was going to make, and I thought I thought I hit the lotto.
Sure.
It was crazy. I mean, engineers get paid pretty well out of college, but I had never made money like that right out of school, and my parents probably had never made that much in a yearly basis, the amount I was going to get paid.
Yep.
So it was. I bought my first truck. It was awesome.
That's good for you. So how long were you in the engineering world before you find yourself getting dissatisfied with the work that you're doing?
Wow, that's so I get hired in 2007-ish, right around the financial crisis, which not good timing. I was probably there about a year before the financial crisis hit, and I remember vividly as an engineer in 2009, probably halfway through the year, a good buddy of mine, actually, we come to work and like half of the employees have a packet on their desk. And we're like, what is going on? And they make an announcement. Anyone with a packet, come to the conference room. Well, they were all getting laid off. I fortunately kept my job. But the feeling of getting laid off for nothing you did wrong really hit hard for me. I didn't know how the real world worked. So I was like, I figured you did a good job. Your job security would be there. So that was the first moment where I was like, man, if I have a family and they're dependent on my income and providing, there's not much security in knowing that any day you can get a packet on your desk and be gone. So that was when the light bulb went off and I was first like, man, maybe this isn't the career path I want. But it wasn't until about 2011 where I finally made the jump. So I was doing engineering for about 4 years before I made the jump into finance.
And how did that go for you? Like, did you know some people? Did you have to go get more schooling? Did your mathematics degree, help you? Give us kind of some details around how that went.
Yeah. So my father-in-law worked on Wall Street, which he unfortunately had a brain injury, so I didn't get a chance to talk to him much about his career. But from what I did know, it was fascinating and interesting, and the markets and how all that acts was just really fascinating to me. There was a guy that lived in our neighborhood that ran a Christian financial firm that fortunately gave me my first opportunity to work in that field. But I was just always interested in markets. Even when I was an engineer, I was messing around with the markets and just enjoyed them. There's also a independence of working in finance that gives you a little bit more control over your career path than working for corporate America. That really gave me the feeling of stability for a family that I was going to have.
And you knew you were going to have a family.
Yes.
Where's Jesus at this time in your life?
Jesus. Who's that?
Right.
I know I made my communion and confirmation, but you're young when that happens.
In the Catholic Church, right?
In the Catholic Church.
Yeah.
I would say through college, I don't recall one time I ever even thought about God. It just was not on my radar.
Sure.
I feel like I might have been partying and been promiscuous, but I feel like I had a pretty good moral compass where I wasn't committing crimes. I wasn't doing anything crazy. So I would have considered myself a good person. So there was a moral compass that I knew. Looking back, how do you know a moral compass? It's only given you by God. But either way, there was a moral compass I knew, but I never thought it was God given or thought about God at all.
You never attributed it to God.
No, I didn't know. It wasn't a conversation I ever had. I never had people talk to me about God. I didn't know who he was. Like it just, so Jesus was didn't know.
Totally familiar with that. So you graduate college and there's no Christ.
Nope.
And you go into engineering. You're there for about 4 years. And now you're with a woman and things are serious. Or are you married at this time?
No, we got engaged in 2007 and married in 2009.
So you are in engineering at this time.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Do you get married in a church?
We did. So that's kind of a funny story. My wife grew up in the church, and throughout college, I didn't know this.
What kind of church?
Presbyterian.
Okay.
So it was never a conversation we ever had. So I was unaware of her growing up in a church. And I find out later that it's common for kids to go off to college and kind of go off the rails and then come back after college. There you go.
I know those roads.
Yes. So she grew up in the church, and after I graduated from Rollins, she started showing some interest in going to church. And I was just appeasing her. We'd go once a month or so to Northland,
Mm-hmm.
and it really meant nothing to me. I was just doing it for her. But we're engaged. We were engaged for about 1.5 years, 2 years, and during that engagement, we're walking our dog. We're living together, like all Christians should not do before they're married. But either way, we're walking our dog, and she looks at me and she's like, "What's this faith life going to be like for you?" And it was like a shocking question to me. I felt like it came out of nowhere.
Did you feel accused or angry?
No. I was
Okay.
more just like, where is this coming from?
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, if faith is not going to be a big part of your life, I don't know if we can get married. And I was just like, wow. I was like, my whole life I felt like was just about to blow up. So we finish our walk. We come in. We're sitting in the kitchen, and I just straight up lie to her and say, it's going to be a big part of my life, out of fear of losing her.
Mm-hmm.
Not knowing that one day it would be, but just lied and just said, yeah, it'll be a big part. Don't worry. Like, it'll be all good.
I'm getting there.
Yeah, we can start going to church. And but even the once a month I was going to church, man, I knew nothing about God.
Mm-hmm.
Did you feel any engagement when you were there, or was you just checking a box?
Zero. Checking a box, zero intentions.
Did you communicate with anybody that was there? Any
No, Northland
other dudes?
is a really big church.
Mhm.
Super easy to just go and leave.
Yep.
Zero connection. Just, yeah, it was
Okay.
just doing it for her.
Mm-hmm.
Until a day that a good buddy of mine, the same buddy that I grew up with in South Florida, he went to Rollins before me and told the coach about me.
Yep.
I lived with him for many years in college, but he had joined a Bible study a couple years before asking me, and they were doing an outreach thing where there was like 12 of them, and they said, "Hey, we know that you guys all have friends that are far from God. Let's do a class on apologetics and invite your friends." So I got that invite, and at the time I was still an engineer and married, and I felt like I was kind of lost. I was going through the motions, and I did feel kind of lost. And when he asked me to go to this Bible study, it excited me. I felt like I needed something. I didn't know what that thing was, but there was like an urge of just like needing something. So when he invited me, it was like a 6-week Bible study, and it was all on apologetics, and man, it just spoke to me. Like the rationality and the history and all of the things that show that Jesus was a real person and that he died and was raised from the dead. Like, man, the evidence was there for me. And I would say that's during that period. I mean, that it was like 2011. That period was crazy for me. It was like I became a believer, I changed career paths, and we had our daughter, like all in the same year.
How'd you become a believer? What does that mean? Was there a moment?
You hear other people's stories, and you want to have a story that just like is like big, but I would say it was just listening to the evidence and coming to the conclusion that this is real.
Mm-hmm.
And it's easier to believe this than any other story that you hear out there.
Oh, yeah.
So I still didn't know what it meant to be a believer.
Okay.
But I just, based on the evidence, I came to the conclusion that like, this is true and I believe. I didn't know what kind of surrender and what kind of struggle it would be going forward,
Right.
to actually live a Christian life. But based on what I heard, I did believe. So it wasn't this aha moment. It was just like a more of a rationality type thing, which again, that's my way of thinking.
Pastor Mike talked about that in his story too. He's like, this makes sense.
Yep.
Yeah,
And-
his was in a garage, and he said, I believe. That's what it is. I think Christians we've gotten this watered down version of you have to say this sinner's prayer. And if you don't say this magical concoction of words, then you haven't done it. But Romans 10 is just like believe in your heart and confess with your mouth and you're saved.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's exactly what happened for you. It was like, I believe you're it.
I went the route of having a tearful submission to God. It's not the fun route. I'd rather have just had somebody tune into the logical part of my brain and say, and convince me like, oh, wow. Yeah, that is better. Instead, I'm thick skulled and you had to drag me through the mud and everything else to finally see the glory of Christ.
Mm-hmm.
So, hey, good. So you have this apologetics classes, you said 6-week course.
Yep.
You go through this. What then changes?
So then the group that got invited to this apologetics course formed their own Bible study.
Okay.
So I had never been part of a Bible study. I didn't know what that meant.
Sure.
But it was my first real introduction to God, to theology, to the Bible. I don't know if I had ever read the Bible before. So it was eye-opening to me. And there was about a group of 10 to 12 of us.
All men?
All men. And we'd meet at First Pres downtown. And we'd just do different studies. We went through the book of Matthew. We read the book Radical, which for a new believer...
Don't.
Yeah. There's some guilt there, that shame that... But it was just new to me. And at the time, throughout, in the middle of all of this, we found grace. And
you found Grace Church.
Grace Church.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry, not the grace from God, but Grace Church.
You were receiving that as well.
Yes. We went to this marriage show at Summit Church, and it was an interview style event, and the host was interviewing Mike and Kelly. And we didn't know who these people were. We had heard the marriage show was this funny show and entertaining. So we went to it, and Mike and Kelly are getting interviewed, and we're listening to Mike and Kelly talk and find out he's a pastor of a church. And there was just like this relatability about him that I had grown up in the Catholic Church. Like, priests are just not relatable. And to see someone that calls himself a pastor and like actually like, man, I could be friends with that guy.
Yeah.
There's something attractive about that.
Mm-hmm.
So when we heard them speak, we're like, we need to find out where this guy is a pastor at. And it was Grace Church. And that's when we found Grace Church.
Which was 2009, 10?
No, 2010.
10, okay.
Yeah. And at the time, I'm a new believer and not digging engineering and liking finance, but not knowing that I was going to go that route, and just had this like, man, it was just a lot of change during that period. And as a believer, like a new believer, I was like on fire for God. I was like, I want to go into a career path where I can use as a platform to share the gospel and to make an impact in people's lives. And as an engineer, I didn't feel like I was able to do that because I was behind a desk most of the time, not in front of people. And so that was another big reason why I went into finance, because I felt like, man, I'm going to be speaking to people every day. And what an opportunity to be able to speak into their lives and show them the love of God. So I went and worked first for a Christian financial firm, was my first introduction into finance, which was an awesome platform to really try to live out my faith as a new believer.
Can we step back for just a second here? You know, you take this apologetics class and then you go to this Bible study. You're starting to be fundamentally changed. Is that fair to say? In the way that you're seeing God and then maybe even seeing your life here?
I wouldn't go that far.
Okay.
I would say the first 5 years or so of my walk, maybe even longer, 6-7 years, was just a gathering of information.
Okay. How's your wife receiving this? Was kind of the direction I was heading. What fruit would she say was benefiting the house?
The first 5 to 7 years, I would say there wasn't much fruit.
Okay.
There was a belief. There was a no clue how to live it out. and not much fruit of me being a believer. So I would say I was a believer, but looking back at my life, there was probably some questions of did I really believe?
Mm.
Because my life wasn't changed very much. Yes, I was going to church every weekend. I was gathering all the information I could. But if you looked at my life,
Not a lot of application.
no, and I still had all my friends that I had before becoming a believer, which were not good influences on my life. I was still drinking a ton. I was still being promiscuous, making bad decisions. Um, there just wasn't much evidence of my faith.
Yeah, sure.
So I question whether or not I really believed. But I don't know.
Okay. And you guys start having kids?
We did. Yeah. We had kids really quickly. I know how kids are made, but I wasn't expecting it to happen so fast. So we got married in April of 2009 and had our daughter in May of 2010.
Mm-hmm.
So it was
Got right
quick.
after it.
Yeah. Yeah. So like, again, so you become a believer, you're changing career paths, you have a daughter, you get married. There was just like a lot of change. And it was not an easy part of life, for me. It was rough.
What
What
do you
way?
think brought you into a closer relationship with Christ? How did that start to manifest, outwardly, that you can like start to see some fruit? What shifted then if 5, 6, 7 years down the road, you're still kind of lukewarm?
I would say the intentionality of getting connected at church.
And that happened at Grace.
It happened at Grace.
Was there a catalyst?
Yeah. I would say we were going to church every weekend for 5, 7 years. But I was just never connected. I didn't have any friends that attended Grace. So there was just like, I was going to church, getting the knowledge, and then going home and living my life. Until I got invited on a men's leadership retreat at Grace.
So were you serving at that time when you got invited?
Nope.
No, very occasionally. I remember we were at a building where we had to create our church and then
Sure.
tear it down
At the school.
High
Yeah.
school.
That's where we first started going.
And I would see Andy sometimes just throwing up bars and creating what we needed to create.
Yeah.
And every once in a while I'd go over there and help. But no, I really wasn't serving. Grace was a lot smaller. If Grace Church was the way it is now, I'd probably never get invited to men's leadership. Just because it's larger, there's a lot more men who are actually leading to invite. But Grace was a smaller church, and for some reason, they saw something in me that prompted them to invite me to this men's leadership retreat. That first I was a little weirded out by, to
Sure.
be honest, but then went, and I would say that first trip was the catalyst for a ton of my faith walk and really taking my faith more seriously.
How'd you go about doing that? What are some of the things that started happening thereafter?
I think having friendships of guys,
Accountability.
and watching guys ahead of me in their walk,
Yeah.
and desiring more of what they have. And then also friends that would call me out on the lifestyle I was living. That was something I needed to really evaluate my faith and take it more seriously.
Mm-hmm.
So going on that trip and meeting guys like Andy and some other guys who are still my closest friends, was an eye opener for me of what I don't think I still to that point knew how to live a Christian life.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know what it looked like.
Mhm.
Sure.
Well, we talk about this all the time, and you're having mentors and having people that are ahead of you that are going to show you the way and how to live, because that is, it's like anything else. You can't jump into the finance world unless somebody teaches you how the finance world works.
Mhm.
And you can't jump into baseball unless you have a coach teaching you how the game is played. And it's no different in the spiritual life. If you're going to be a follower of Christ and walk with Christ, I need somebody to show me what that even looks like. And, there is a fear when you go on a trip like that, the idea that I'm going to go away for 5 days or 6 days with a bunch of Christian dudes I don't know. And you
Bunch
have
of
these
weirdos.
weird connotations in your brain about
Yeah.
what's actually going to happen. And then you get here and it's like, oh, they're just everyday normal dudes just like me that
Yep.
they just love Jesus. That's
Well,
the
and
difference.
let's take it even a step further, which is I believe they have, as Jack would say, they let it look good on them.
Yeah.
So there's something that they have that you see that's attractive. You don't maybe know what it is, so you want to spend some more time and try to get to understand it. And I think in that close proximity of like a 5-day retreat, you're confronted by it.
Well,
And it has enough time for it to kind of settle in, for some of these stories to be told. You hear some of the grittiness of some other people that's relatable, so you're not so isolated. And then you share some of your stuff and you're not condemned for the decisions you made. You see a lot of understanding there and you go, oh, wait, I can relate to these guys and they seem to have something that I want too. So let me continue to chase.
and they're not judgmental jerks.
Some can be.
Some can be, but
Like-
we weren't there. I mean, Nick and I's first day on that trip, I was just like, how's your giving? We just got right into it, man.
Yeah, and I had stereotyped the Christian
How could
so
you
badly.
not? Our society has evolved, especially in the West, to really bastardize any people of faith as
Well,
small-minded.
Christians have done their own fair job in creating that path as well, though.
Certainly. But it is reinforced then through television, movies.
Righteous gemstones.
So we have a lot of these things in culture right now that would say like, yeah, there's a lot of negativism that surrounds it, let's say. And then when we see the most frequently elevated situations of the church are the negative things, a preacher that, committed a bad act, you hear about that and you go, see, this is what they're doing over there. Yuck. I don't need that stuff. So I think that's intentional. That kind of stuff is brought up. So it's hard. There's a barrier there. If you don't come from a place of faith, if you didn't grow up in the church system, as I didn't either, there's a lot of negativisms to overcome to then see the forest from the trees. Oh, some individuals have had this negative experience, but really when I dove in and dug in a bit, it's like the people that were actually following Jesus and were actually in the word and were actually allowing God to shape their lives, they did have a good thing. And all this other stuff out here, sure, there are people that are being poor examples, and sure, there are negativisms that can be elevated. But I see a lot of good here, and I'm lacking that good, and I'd really like to get a piece of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's a desire amongst everyone for something more.
Yes.
And a lot of people chase things that are temporary and they always let you down. But going on that men's trip and Andy was a massive part of it, and just hearing his story and him being vulnerable with me and like telling me some of the things of his past and like thinking like, wow, like, so he went from that to this. I was like, so maybe there's some hope for me.
Yeah.
So it was a big part of my spiritual journey, just other men being vulnerable and trusting me with their story, to really give me hope for mine.
So you come back from this, there's been a shift in the way that you understand. Now you've got some partners here to walk this journey with you, learning more about Christ. Are you getting in the Bible? Are you reading the Bible? Are you letting it start to impact you that way? Or what are you doing that?
Yeah, I would say, again, being resilient and gritty, I was really good at trying hard.
Mhm.
And I still am, honestly.
Sure.
Like I can try hard and check the boxes. But learning how to to not depend on yourself, and surrendering different parts of your life, is like a constant battle. Uh, so yes, getting into the Word and reading the Bible, um, super important, and something that I'm still not the best at. I know we went on men's leadership trip last year, and my goal was to read the Bible every day for a year, read the whole Bible in 365 days. I'm on day 170, and men's trip is a month away. So I've probably averaged one every 2 days.
Mm-hmm.
So
Still way ahead of the curve of most people. So you're still on track. You know what I'm saying? It's like you're doing something. I know it's not what you want to do and what you committed to and what you set out to do, but at the same time, it's something you're still faithfully doing over time. And you need to give recognition to what you have done even in that work as well. That's beneficial to you. So
yeah,
don't
thank you.
kick your butt too much on that, man.
Yeah, but again, when I started reading the Bible, it was more of a discipline, like check the box. And over time, it has changed to where like my desire is to know God more.
Right.
And where else will you learn about God other than the Bible?
That's right.
So my reasoning for reading the Bible has changed and is continuously changing.
Yep.
To have more of a desire to know who God is. So I would say it has changed, but the biggest thing coming out of that first men's trip was having Christian men be the core people in my life, and doing life with them, and just seeing how a Christian life should be lived, was the biggest impact for my spiritual walk coming out of that trip.
We talk frequently about iron sharpens iron. It's a biblical principle.
Mhm.
Andy challenged you on that trip and said, how's your giving?
Mhm.
Which isn't frequently my favorite question to start friendships with. But, whatever.
Let's just get buddy. What are we waiting on?
Sure. In your bio, it speaks about you had been giving, but generally it was to reflect back on your good nature. Did anything change hereafter after being challenged that way? And how so?
Yeah, so again, not having struggles with trust, trusting the church, and really faith in Christ is about trusting.
Who do you trust when you have faith?
You trust God. So I feel like that's going to be a lifelong struggle, is trusting more and more, just because of how ingrained not trusting anyone was on me as a child.
Yep.
So trusting the church with my money that I earned and I worked hard for, and I did all these things. It's still a massive struggle for me, but I knew it was something I should have been doing. So at the end of the year in December, I would write a fat check to the church and be like, oh, wait till they see this one.
Mm-hmm.
Which is total just prideful.
Yeah, did you ever get anybody showing up at your house with the balloons and a big thank you?
No, but
Shocking.
Band outside.
Yeah.
Mariachi band.
But it was new. It was something I knew I should be doing, so
Yeah.
I was going to do it. I wasn't tithing, but I was still writing a pretty big check.
Sure.
That made me feel good and prideful, and look what I did.
Yeah.
And on that trip, Andy and I were sitting out on the balcony. It was a morning, we're drinking our coffee, and I don't know where the question came from when he said, "How's your giving?"
His brain's insane.
I was like, this guy's going at it. But I wasn't gonna lie.
I frequently do that.
So I told him the truth of what it was like, and he just
Had you ever contemplated it prior to that?
no.
Okay.
No. Again, I didn't know. I had no one in my life speaking truths to me.
I'm so glad you bring that up again. It's very important. Again, that mentorship. If you grew up in a godless house, or you grew up in a godless environment, or maybe you grew up in an environment where they had God, but somebody was dictating it in inappropriate ways, which there's that too.
Mm-hmm.
You need someone to step in and lead you through this journey. This is a difficult and strange existence here. And it is so much easier and so much more rewarding. And boy, I could go on and on. But when you have that mentorship, it's everything.
Mm-hmm.
It really, shows you those footprints in the sand that you can follow, and having that communication to run ideas past other folks. There's just no value you can put on it.
Yeah, because often for someone who's not a believer and becomes a believer, you read the Bible, and it's confusing.
It's very
Yes,
confusing.
it is.
So having someone that has lived the faith for years be able to interpret it and be like, oh, this is how you should live because of this, is just super helpful. So sitting on that deck, he just challenged me and said, hey, like, you don't have to go from like here to here. Like, just take little steps. Just take little steps every year. And since then, it's what I've done every year. We just take little steps, and I wish they were bigger, but it's hard. It's really hard to especially when you don't like the business side of church. And now our church is unbelievable, Grace Church, and they're conservative with money. They've never done anything to make, but it's still hard to give an organization your money that you probably rely on too much for safety and security. It's hard to give it away. And then to give it away joyfully.
Like the Bible says.
How do you do that?
Can we talk about the business side of church? Do you mind if we dive into that for a second here?
Yeah.
Because I hear this from a lot of people. I understand it. There's an aspect of when we talk about the church as a business, because it's like, we don't want to conflate these two ideas, but it's like, well, we have payroll and we have, bills to pay, and we have things that need to be done. So there's a business aspect to church of things. What is it, do you think, today that puts people off about church when they think about the business of it?
I would say it's probably judging the church and how they're spending money. And obviously, you're not going to agree with everything a church is spending money on. I feel like Grace Church does a really good job of being conservative with money. But looking at it and just judging it and being like, man, like, if I gave my money elsewhere, may it be used for better cases? I don't know.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would say that for me, the business side of evaluating how churches are spending money, and I don't know. I don't like being asked for money either. But I know it's something necessary. I've seen personally my own life and a lot of others' lives changed through our church. So it should be easy for me to give.
Yeah.
But it's still a struggle.
The truth is, if people just gave joyfully, the church would never have to ask for money. It would always be bountiful. They would never even have to ask for it. We'd be able to do whatever we wanted to do or needed to do. But this is one of the biggest problems. This is why God talks more about money than he does heaven and hell, because he understood throughout his word that money was going to be the stronghold that's on people's lives. And I think one of the truths we always have to remember, that I heard a pastor one time tell me this that really resonated with me. And it was just like, God has called you to give. That's your faithful part. It's the church's job to be faithful with the money that you give. You're going to answer to God one day for your part, and they're going to answer to God one day for their other part. And so there's this piece that, yes, I don't want to be foolish with what I'm doing, but there's a part of it is just me surrendering. Oh, God, this is yours. You've given this to me. I'm giving it back to you, and here's where I'm going to give it to. And I've done my part. And now it's the church's part to steward that money well, and that they're going to have to answer to God one day for that aspect of it.
And not trusting that God's going to continue to provide is a real hard one too. I rely on finances too much for my security of my family, and to be able to provide for them and provide them the lifestyle.
Thank you for being willing to share that.
Need. So when you give money, you're down money.
If you give $10,000, you're down $10,000. This isn't a pay to play.
even though it's going towards great things, it's trusting God's going to continue to bless my business and provide for me, so I can keep providing for my family and the church. So there's probably a lack of trust there on my part.
It's also providing at the level that I want, that I like to live at, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
I think we have many examples, again, as I was speaking of before, culturally, we have many examples of churches being irresponsible with, parishioners' money.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of it.
Mhm.
So in my own heart, I struggle with that because I've seen so much of it. And it's just, you see these mega churches and the guy that's the preacher flies in on a helicopter after he got off his jet airplane, and you go like,
Huh.
what is this? I don't like that stuff. And of course, culture promotes that. They show it and they talk about it. And then when that same person has a fall, they go, see, this is the church. And when you grow up in a place like I did, where it's TV and movies, then that is what's elevated. So that's what you see the church as. It represents that. And on top of that, growing up in poverty, so living in a place where you watched your parents fight over money. You watched other people around you have plenty and you not have enough, or maybe just barely getting enough, but them having an abundance and you wishing you had an abundance, and then that envy thing, and then carrying that into adulthood. So then you're dealing with these dual, or even more than that, potentially factors that are always somewhere considering in the back of your mind. Is Pastor Mike going to go get a Lamborghini at some point in time? Strikes me as unlikely. But, the examples that were ingrained in you through television and culture say that I want to just, and when I give it up, it's gone. It's totally gone from me. Now I can't snatch that back.
Mm-hmm.
And then that time when you were young and there wasn't enough, or somebody else had more and you wanted that thing too, but you couldn't get it because you didn't have it. There's that piece of you that goes, well, will I ever find myself back in this place again? I mean, the possibility exists. There was a market collapse in 2008 and many people lost all their money and all those people lost their jobs. Like, shouldn't I be storing a little bit more here, God? And it is trust.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. The responsibility is on God. I give it up. This is me speaking this out. I struggle in my own way on these things too, but it's like, the constant question is, do I trust you, God? And have you shown up? And if the answer is yes, then I got to trust you again. And I should really trust you with more, because when I actually think about how much God shows up when I do trust him, it's like, well, I'm not given enough. And that doesn't mean money to me. That means my time, talent, and treasure. So I think part of the components that's helped me escape the money trap is realizing that I also have time and talent to give.
Mm-hmm.
And by showing up to things that are outside of my comfortability zone are things that are also, I'm submitting at the foot of the cross and saying, God, I'm given the money thing, but I have time here.
Mm-hmm.
Or I have talent in this. And God, can I lift this up to you too? And God says, of course. And then he blesses that too in his way. And it doesn't always mean financially. But, as I've kind of contemplated this money thing, I've thought more about the friendships that I have and the circle of influence around me, and how, if God forbid I ever did reach a hard time, the vulnerability I've heard from my brothers in Christ and the family that I've developed here, it's like I could turn to these people and say, hey, I've got this issue. What can I do? And I just know that I would have a bunch of people that would go, how can I help? And let's figure this out together. And it's a tough thing to do, again, coming from a place of insecurity and instability, to be able to then somehow, when our fathers disappoint us, to still trust in our Heavenly Father to not disappoint us. But it's what you're already doing. So you're doing this, but it's a little trust at a time. As you build and then you look back, you're like, whoa, I am way up on the scaffolding of trust with the Lord here,
Mm-hmm.
and boy, God, you've built something pretty huge around me here, actually. And then it's being grateful for that and giving out of that happiness from that gratitude place.
Mm.
And it's all accumulative like that. And then you can fall back into it for a second. And it's really just kind of recognizing and being like, but God, look at how much you've done for me. So it's reflecting and then looking forward. And it's this circle of thoughts.
Mm.
Yeah, it's really hard not to store up as much as possible for yourself and your family. It's like, well, yes, you should save for retirement. You should save for purchases, but when is it enough?
That's a good question.
It's a really hard question, and it's different for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
But there isn't enough for everyone, and for me, I'll set goals financially and hit
What you
them.
should do.
Yep, what you should do, and you hit them, and then all of a sudden, that becomes not enough, and then you got to go more and more. You think it's going to provide you security, but I think at the end of the day, it doesn't, because you get to it and you realize I still feel as naked as I was before.
Mm.
So I think it might be a false sense of security.
It absolutely
100%.
is. It only can be.
Yeah.
Again, we're eternal creatures living this temporal life that at some point in time we know that we're moving on into eternity. And when you read the book, it lays it out for you very clearly on the choices that you should be making here. And at no point in time in there does it say accumulate everything you possibly can to buy your way into this next place. Jesus bought the way into the next place. So whether you have a lot or a little, if your faith is in Christ, is going to be the determining factor of what's next. So it's like, how could you not feel if that's where you're setting the future comfortability of yourself? And we know that the future goes on into eternity. Of course, it's going to be an unsatiating thing as you realize these goals.
Mhm.
Now, it doesn't mean you shouldn't reach goals. And actually, I'd like to transition to that now as we talk about what it looks like to be a good steward. I think, we're unpacking some of the difficulties here of trusting God with our tithing. And I would like to hit it again at the very end, but you're talking about the importance of setting up these markers. When should someone start to look towards investing for their future? What's an age?
So I would say as soon as they start making money,
16, 15,
as
13.
soon as you,
Got a paper route.
it's a discipline, just like reading the Bible. Like
Right.
Saving is a discipline.
Yeah.
And if you start saving and giving as soon as you start making money, that becomes like what's normal. And so if you're working at Publix or at 16 years old, save 10% of your money. So I don't think there's a too early to start. I think academia has done a really, really bad job of teaching people financial awareness and how to handle money.
Seems almost intentional.
Which is actually good for me because it provides me with clients, because the lack of knowledge in that industry is just, it's crazy to me that schools don't teach this more, because
Sure.
it's such an important thing.
Is it an ever-changing industry too, though? Or are there still some basic principles?
Oh, there's basic principles of saving and investing that have been around for a very long time. Does the industry change? Yes, it's always changing, but there's only certain things you can control, and savings is one of them. How much you put away of your paycheck is something that you have control over. And I get it. When you make money, you feel like you worked hard. I earned all this. You want to increase your lifestyle. You want to spend more and enjoy more. And I think that's all massively important. And I think one of the biggest financial recommendations is something I learned from Pastor Mike. And it's at some point during your life, you need to freeze your lifestyle. You need to you have a conversation with your wife and say, hey, this lifestyle is good. There's no reason for us to need more or increase our lifestyle. And then as you earn more money over your career and you freeze your lifestyle, there's just so much room there to to not be worried about paying your bills, about
What
giving.
what does freeze your lifestyle mean? Can you define that a little bit?
So obviously you can't freeze your lifestyle because the cost of living goes up with inflation every
Sure.
year. But have a budget. Know what it costs to live your lifestyle. Everyone's lifestyle
How somebody know how
cost
to do that?
is going to be different. The way I help clients with that is itemize all your spending.
For how long?
I do it annually. So, and honestly, I probably do it more frequently. Whenever I have all my spending itemized, especially the big items, whenever car insurance comes due, I know what I paid last year, and here's my new premium. Whoa, that jumped 20%. I'm not just going to pay it. I'm going to go to someone and try to find a better price. So I'm constantly looking at my spending and making sure it stays within a certain range. So having a budget and itemizing all your spending, and there's so many people that when they do a budget, they're shocked at what they're spending money on.
Let's talk about if you've never done this before. You've never itemized. I've never itemized. You've helped me itemize. Is it a month? Is a month a good place to start? Let's take a look at 1 month. What is the incoming versus outgoing monies?
Yep. So, and we're more talking about what's outgoing right now.
Sure.
But yeah, do it monthly for a year to get an average yearly expense. And different people are different with money. Some are more responsible where they can put everything on a credit card and then pay off that credit card at the end of every month just to capture the rewards of a credit card. But some people just can't do that. And if you can't do that, then don't, because credit cards are no place to hold a balance. The amount of interest they charge you is absurd, and it's just a hole that you'll dig yourself into that's really hard to get out of. But track where all your money's going on a monthly basis. And there's some expenses that come up once a year. So that's why you want to do it for a year, to really capture where all your money is going.
Great.
And then when you identify where your money's going, you can start prioritizing different areas. You're like, wow, man, I'm spending too much money on this. I need to back off a little bit. Maybe we shouldn't go out and eat as much as we do. Because look at how much we're spending on a yearly basis on going out and eating. 16 years old, save 10% of your money. So I don't think there's a too early to start. I think academia has done a really, really bad job of teaching people financial awareness and how to handle money.
Seems almost intentional.
Which is actually good for me, because it provides me with clients, because the lack of knowledge in that industry is just, it's crazy to me that schools don't teach this more, because it's such an important thing.
Is it an ever-changing industry too, though? Or are there still some basic principles?
Oh, there's basic principles of saving and investing that have been around for a very long time. Does the industry change? Yes, it's always changing, but there's only certain things you can control, and savings is one of them. How much you put away of your paycheck is something that you have control over. And I get it. When you make money, you feel like you worked hard. I earned all this. You want to increase your lifestyle. You want to spend more and enjoy more. And I think that's all massively important. And I think one of the biggest financial recommendations is something I learned from Pastor Mike. And it's at some point during your life, you need to freeze your lifestyle. You need to you have a conversation with your wife and say, hey, this lifestyle is good. There's no reason for us to need more or increase our lifestyle. And then as you earn more money over your career and you freeze your lifestyle, there's just so much room there to not be worried about paying your bills, about giving.
What does freeze your lifestyle mean? Can you define that a little bit?
So obviously you can't freeze your lifestyle because the cost of living goes up with inflation every year. But have a budget. Know what it costs to live your lifestyle. Everyone's lifestyle
How does somebody know how
cost
to
is
do
gonna
that?
is going to be different. The way I help clients with that is itemize all your spending.
For how long?
I do it annually. So, and honestly, I probably do it more frequently. Whenever I have all my spending itemized, especially the big items, whenever car insurance comes due, I know what I paid last year, and here's my new premium. Whoa, that jumped 20%. I'm not just going to pay it. I'm going to go to someone and try to find a better price. So I'm constantly looking at my spending and making sure it stays within a certain range. So having a budget and itemizing all your spending, and there's so many people that when they do a budget, they're shocked at what they're spending money on.
Let's talk about if you've never done this before. You've never itemized. I've never itemized. You've helped me itemize. Is it a month? Is a month a good place to start? Let's take a look at 1 month. What is the incoming versus outgoing monies?
Yep. So, and we're more talking about what's outgoing right now.
Sure.
But yeah, do it monthly for a year to get an average yearly expense. And different people are different with money. Some are more responsible where they can put everything on a credit card and then pay off that credit card at the end of every month just to capture the rewards of a credit card. But some people just can't do that. And if you can't do that, then don't, because credit cards are no place to hold a balance. The amount of interest they charge you is absurd, and it's just a hole that you'll dig yourself into that's really hard to get out of. But track where all your money's going on a monthly basis. And there's some expenses that come up once a year. So that's why you want to do it for a year, to really capture where all your money is going.
Great.
And then when you identify where your money's going, you can start prioritizing different areas. You're like, wow, man, I'm spending too much money on this. I need to back off a little bit. Maybe we shouldn't go out and eat as much as we do, because look at how much we're spending on a yearly basis on going out and eating. But it's an eye opener. A lot of people will just say, oh, there's more money coming in than going out. No, really evaluate where your money's going, and it'll help you determine, like I said, prioritize where you should be spending your money.
Yeah, I think most people's biggest bill right now is Amazon.
That's the consumerism world we live in, man. Living in the West it's awesome. I wouldn't pick any other place, but the pressures of having
conveniences, man,
and comparing what other people have, it's a real thing, and it's hard not to consume.
Yes, it is.
So yes,
it is.
So this person then has this year's worth of their stuff. Here's where they're at, but they get a promotion at work. They want to enjoy that. They should still be able to enjoy that responsibly, is what we're saying.
Yes. So yeah, as you're early in your career, your lifestyle, you should enjoy things, and your lifestyle should move up. But everyone at some point should evaluate the life they have and say, hey, I like this life. There's no reason for me to have to do more. And then every year as your pay increases, there's just so much buffer there for you to save more, to give more, and just not to be worried and burdensome with not being able to pay off certain bills.
So when you were assisting my household, that's maybe didn't bring that up before, but Nick helps us with our money. And one of the things that you unpacked for us early on was like, what do you think of your lifestyle now? And we're like, well, we would like a bigger house. And you go, okay, well, how do we see ourselves doing that? And we talked about it, and then we got the bigger house and the land that we wanted and such. And it's like, okay, now where do we go from here? Where do you guys want to see things? We've kind of talked about that, but at some point in time, it's like, if you're happy in this place, we should look towards always accelerating our retirement plans so we can continue to enjoy this place into retirement. Because I think what you're saying then is, what can happen is you're making this amount of money now. This is maybe, but this could be your high watermark. And if you haven't saved for when you retire, and then you get that Social Security, and then you get a subpar retirement amount of money, it's not going to be able to continue this lifestyle that you've so enjoyed up through this period of time. Is that kind of why?
No. So I would say early in your working career, there's probably not a good reason to hire a financial advisor. You're just getting going. Maybe
what would you tell them to do then? If you were just to be real simple, say, okay, this paycheck,
save 10% of your pay
where should they put the 10%?
Usually companies offer a retirement plan, a 401k.
Okay. If
not, you can start an individual retirement account called an IRA. Save 10% of your pay. It's an awesome place to start. And if you start saving 10% at a young age, typically things will go well for you.
Where does somebody go to get an IRA?
if they want to start like a Roth IRA, how do they do that?
There's lots of different, you can meet with a financial advisor, but you could do it yourself.
How? Is it online or something?
Yeah, there's a bunch of different companies. Schwab is a big one. Fidelity is a big one. I would say those are the two biggest ones. Vanguard's a big one.
I just download the app.
You could download the app, go to the website, and just open up an IRA, and 10% of all your paychecks put into the accounts. Now, a reason why you should hire a financial advisor is because there's limitations and there's rules around how much you could save in IRAs and 401ks. And because academics do such a bad job at teaching people, they need to hire a professional to kind of help guide them along the way. And oftentimes when people save, they can't see the future that well.
It's very hard to.
So a lot of my job is to gather as much as their information as I can and their goals with their finances and retirement, and project that out in the future and say, hey, saving 10% of your pay per year for the next 20 years, this is what it's going to be able to provide for you. And look how great that is, which incentive, wow, I need to really focus on saving. Maybe I should even save more because I see what it's going to do over 20, 30 years and what it's going to provide for me later. So there's lots of different software that we have that not an individual person would purchase because it's too expensive.
Yeah.
But we can purchase it and then use it to do the projections for our clients, which are super helpful in actually like looking at that roadmap and seeing how little changes I make now make a massive difference in the future.
So is there an age or maybe a years in the field or a financial bracket or amount of money saved, whatever it would be, that somebody should then approach a guy like you and say, hey, here's where I'm at. I've got this kind of stuff invested. I've got this much money. Now I'm looking, or I've been in the field for 10 years now and I've been saving well and da, 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 da.
So this is where my industry has done a poor job. For young people with not a lot of money, a lot of people in my industry won't take them on as clients and help them because, unfortunately, there's not much for them to make.
Yep.
So it's really hard for a young person with not a lot of assets and maybe is trying to pay off student loans and their consumer debt. It's really hard for them to get a financial advisor to help them.
At least a good one.
At least a good one that you can trust.
Yeah.
But I would say as soon as you get married, try to find a financial advisor to sit down and see what life is going to look like for both you and your wife. I think most people get married at a younger age. I think it could play a massive difference in their financial future just by sitting down for a couple hours with an advisor, and him or her giving you some advice on some wise money decisions you can make going forward.
The highest reasoning for divorce is financial. So what you say there is very wise. If you can get your finances in order, it would dictate that you would have a longer and happier marriage.
Yeah.
Just based on the numbers.
And I see it all in my industry. I meet with lots of different couples, and I stand firm that if you are married, your finances should be together. I see this too much where the husband will have his bank account, the wife will have her bank account, and then they'll like deposit money in a joint account to pay bills. One, I don't think that is a conducive way to handle money, because it can cause you to want to hide things. Not that you would, but if everything's separate, it can say, "Oh, I can spend money on this," and
There's an
She
accountability.
won't know about it.
Yeah.
But again, when you get married, you become one. Your financial future is your wife's, and hers is yours. So everything you do should be together. And what's your money is hers, and hers is yours, and that's the way it should be treated. Now, that's part of implementing my Christian thoughts into my secular
Yeah, but there's
field.
there's wisdom behind that. Marriage is an institution of the church. God created marriage. So if God created marriage and you're going to be married, then you might as well abide by some of the rules and laws he set forth that are for your advantage.
The government also approaches marriage as a legal union. So if I go bankrupt, my wife joins me there.
Right.
Because she becomes responsible for my assets and vice versa if we're both on the house and such and we're married. I mean, so it is important both in the Christian world, but also in secular society. So it's not to, I appreciate that you bring it up in that sense because yes, the Bible does speak to this financial responsibility and stewardship. But like regular society has that there too.
But a lot of people, unfortunately, don't talk about money enough before they get married. So all of a sudden they'll find themselves married, and their spouse, now spouse, will have all this debt or are just not responsible with money.
Yeah.
And it causes them to want to like, hey, you keep yours over there because you're not responsible.
You know, bring that stink in here.
And I'll keep mine here. And it's all because they don't have the conversation beforehand. And they're adults, but I think parents have failed teaching their kids how important this is part of a marriage and life, that they should prioritize it and have the conversation.
When you grow up in a household where your parents are fiscally irresponsible and then you just become a fiscally irresponsible adult, there's shame that goes with that, especially when you meet someone that is fiscally responsible and does have their things together. And maybe you're trying to make a change. You know, for myself, I started late in life, you know, making even decent decisions, let alone good ones. And I didn't have money. Thankfully, my wife, from my perspective, thankfully my wife didn't have money either. But, you know, we were later in life trying to make decisions in a way. You know, me in my late 30s, my wife in her early 30s, and we're like, okay, what does retirement look like? Starting to make some of these bigger pictures as we got married and figuring out how do we go about trying. And we met with a financial advisor too. And both of them said, come back when you have something to talk about.
Yeah, that goes. There's not money to be made for them. So a lot of times they won't take you on as clients. And it's terrible for my industry.
These weren't cruel men by any stretch. They were just like, start saving. Like we missed the mark on some of the earlier stuff you were saying. So then we had to do that. And we started saving. And really what it took was like hard work. It took building up equity in a house over time, making some improvements to the house to be able to sell the house, to be able to get any bloody money, you know, because really it's year-on-year work or it's selling a large asset, which we did. And that kind of moved things along and so on and so forth.
But there's a massive amount of insecurity too for someone to just lay out their money in front of someone.
Especially,
and I get that.
Yes.
Well, especially talking to a successful financial person who has done everything well and done everything right.
You feel feel like that when you approach it. I certainly did. And it's like, I've only got this much. And you feel like it is very vulnerable.
Yep.
Because it says like, I'm starting at this very low place and you're reflecting on, but I work hard and I try hard and, you know, and it can be this, thankfully you never treated it that way. You treated us, we go to church together and stuff, but you were like, hey, it's great to have this. Let's talk about it. Let's get it out in the open, man. And there was nothing about you that felt like you were going to shame me in what meager amount I thought I was bringing to the table. You know, it was like, let's talk about it and like, let me help you because I didn't understand it. And it took some faith on my part to reach you with it, frankly. What would you say to someone who's in their 40s that's maybe never made responsible decisions. I mean, we'd have them make that one, month by month tracking of the outgoing money from their household. Is it too late, or are there things they can start doing?
It's never, I shouldn't say never, but it's very rarely ever too late. No matter where you are in your financial picture. I've had clients sit down with me after their kids graduate college and they've spent all their money on their kids and they've got nothing, and they've got the next 10, 15 years to focus on retirement. Yes, will their retirement look a little different than someone that started when they're 20? Sure, but they can still save enough to provide themselves with a decent retirement. So I would say it's never too late.
Just should they get riskier?
Well, that's a loaded question, because with risk, obviously the potential to earn more money comes, but the potential to lose also comes true as well. So I don't know if becoming riskier, again, going back to control the things you can control. How much are you saving? You can control that.
Mm-hmm.
No one knows what the market's going to do a year from now rather than next month or tomorrow. So that's a control that's kind of out of your hands.
Mm-hmm.
You have history to tell you how markets do, but there's a lot of periods of time where the market's not good. So having more of a long-term perspective and just saving as much as you can, typically you'll look back after 15 years and be like, oh, wow, like we did all right.
Mm-hmm.
So just control the things you can, control what you spend, control how much you save. Sometimes people have more control over how much they can earn. There's always a potential to work harder to earn more money, maybe change career paths, but it's never too late to really start saving and building what you want your retirement to look like.
Mm-hmm.
And interpreted what you said a few minutes back was, don't carry big debts. If you have these debts, get these debts paid off.
Yeah, so I know Dave Ramsey's a big guy everyone listens to, and he gives more good advice than bad, but there's not a lot of blanket advice for everybody.
Sure.
Everyone's situation is different, and you need to treat everyone's situation differently. So not all debt is bad. If you were one of the fortunate ones to refinance your house with 2.5% rates, like, that's not bad debt. If you can earn more money on your money than 2.5%, you're in the positive.
Mm-hmm.
So not all debt is bad. I would say credit card debt is always bad, because they charge 20+%. There's nothing that's going to guarantee you're going to earn 20+% on your money.
Mm-hmm.
So credit card debt is always bad. I can firmly say that, but not all debt is bad.
Okay.
And car debts, a lot of times car companies offer low interest rate loans. Like, take advantage of that. They're giving you money at a low interest rate, so you could use their money while your money is working harder and doing better than it would have been than putting it all into a car.
But if the interest rates are high, maybe wait another year, push this car that you currently have a little further.
Yeah. So
You might have recommended that to a buddy of yours.
yeah. So being patient is a hard thing for people. And sometimes I got to tell people no, like, hey, you could, but it's going to negatively impact you for what you said your financial priorities were. So you shouldn't do it. I mean, you're a grown man or woman, like, you could do it, but it's going to negative. And oftentimes I'll show them.
Yeah, you said, is this a necessity or a vanity?
Yeah,
I think.
Well, often too, it creates unhealthy patterns. So you did it once, so it's easy to make that poor decision again, and before you know it, you've built up all this debt again because you were just looking at the here and now rather than in the future. And that's the helpful part of somebody coming in and sitting beside you with some accountability.
Unemotionally.
Going,
assessing just the
You could.
facts.
Yep. Some people can just take it and be like, okay, I'm going to put it off. Others need to see the evidence. So fortunately, we have awesome software that can show side-by-side picture of one decision versus another.
Mm.
And over the next 30 years, how that one small decision you think is small is going to affect your projections for the next 30 years. And they see that and they're like, wow, that makes the decision really easy.
I don't want that thing no more.
I'm going to wait. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Because this is more important than having this new truck or new car.
Documentation beats conversation, right?
Yep.
It does it every single time.
Is there any other kind of, as we kind of go about trying to land this plane here, is there any other financial advice that just sticks that you think works and you think would be applicable for anybody trying to figure out how to be a good steward of their household income?
Yeah. So, unfortunately, my industry is not hard to get into. A lot of people get into my industry because there's a potential to earn a lot of money.
Okay.
So I would say the most important thing is to find an advisor you could trust. I promise you, over the life of your finances, things are going to go wrong. But if you have an advisor that you trust is making the best decisions for your financial future, it's priceless. Because we can't control the markets. The markets are going to do what they do, and there's going to be some hard conversations because things aren't always going to work out well. There's a lot of assumptions that are made looking at financial futures. But finding someone you could trust and committing to the long-term plan is so important. We can get short-sighted, and money breeds fear and FOMO and greed.
Mm-hmm.
And keeping your head down and controlling what you can control, and then trusting that if you are committed over the long term, things will work out. Typically, you'll be all right.
Boy, I think every single one of those things could apply towards tithing too. So I don't think we even need to get back into that piece. I think you just covered it right there. I think trust that you're doing the right things, that you're investing in the right place, and it's going to work out in the end because ultimately God's in control of that too.
Yeah.
The stewardship mindset, right?
That's what it
I'm
is.
stewarding my finances well over long periods of time. There's a faithfulness aspect that will come to that. And we get a rewards of stewardship as well.
Yeah, God blesses it. Not that he'll give you more, but you see it over and over in the Bible. You surrender, then you get blessed.
When we show up, God shows up.
That's
like
right.
Mike says.
Yeah, we always want to be very careful. We're not going down the prosperity gospel road when we talk about giving. That if you give this big gift, God is going to give it back to you, because there's no promise of that. But I will say this: I've seen it happen in people's lives over and over and over again when they faithfully give. God showed up in ways that were just more abundant than they could have ever imagined. We shared the story there of this in our last podcast we did of a family that called the Barnhart family that owns a big crane and rigging company, and they do $400 million a year in business, and the owners live off $100,000 a year, and they give 50% of their money away.
It's amazing.
It's amazing. Their business grows and grows and grows and grows, but they froze their lifestyle, said we're really comfortable right here.
Yeah.
And so when you hear stories like that and you see God's faithfulness like that, God just continues to bless in abundant ways. So
Yeah, and fortunately, God's blessed my business. It just, I don't know how, but every year just continues to get better and better.
it's because you're good at what you do and you're faithful at what you do.
But it has me having to constantly evaluate my giving because he's blessing my business, which is providing me more income. I have to evaluate then, what am I giving and how much am I giving? And every year I have to increase that. So I've taken little steps since 2018, but I still have a lot of little steps to go. And it might be a lifelong struggle.
Mm-hmm.
I suspect it will be.
Yeah. But it's my desire to trust God more in that part of my life, and I'm gonna make it happen.
Yeah. I think it's awesome. Thank you, Nick Manson, friends.
Man.
Thank you so much for joining us, bro.
Thanks for having
great
me, man.
advice. Excellent story. How could people reach out to you? Can they hire you for a money guy if they've got enough money to somehow tempt your interest? Just kidding.
Yeah. I'm taking on clients. I obviously have a limited amount of space left for clients, but You can go to our website, www.fortive.com.
FORTIV.
Correct. There you go. And find everything you need to
It's a
find
stereo
out.
sound.
And even if I can't help you, I'm always happy to sit down with someone. I get it constantly, and just hey man, just look at things and am I okay? And typically I find a way that I can help them, but sometimes like, hey, you're doing everything right. Like, you're good. You don't need me or my services. So I'm happy to sit down with anyone with as much or as little. I'm happy to give my time and help those that need it.
And it's Nick Manson. The Manson spelt like the cult leader, right? Just so everybody has a reference
Yeah,
point.
you had to go there, right?
Hey, I just want to tell you this too, man. I'm real proud of you, man. Your growth over the last 7 years has been astronomical. And yeah, sometimes there's ups and downs, but the Christian life trajectory is like this, right? It's like this. And just seeing that in your life, your leadership, your desire to be a follower of Christ, your desire to be a better dad and a husband, it's inspirational, man. So I love you, brother. I just want you to keep doing what you're doing because you're killing it, man.
Thank you. You guys are a big part of it and being central to my relationship. So I appreciate the friendship and look forward to 10 years from now and see where we're at.
Yeah, we'll get it back. We'll get this thing going again at that point in time.
Yeah.
Guys, thank you so much for joining us. That's our good friend Nick Manson. If you have other financial questions, he got some of that information to you. You can reach out to us. Also, we can get his information to you. www.updpodcast.com. You can hit us up at updpodcast@gmail.com. You can hit us up on X. You can hit us up on Instagram, YouTube. These videos are on YouTube. If you're on Spotify, like, subscribe, comment, please. People are starting to really interact a lot. You can be part of that. We have a Patreon, UPD Podcast at Patreon. So you can go there. You can see what some of the swag looks like. You can get yourself involved in that. Boy, what else is there?
I mean, we're everywhere now, so
We're all over the place. Guys, thank you so much for joining us again here today, Untrained Philosophical Discussionists. We want to pray that you have a deep and fulfilling relationship with Jesus and that he blesses you all the days of your life.
and all God's people said.
Amen.
They said
sure
amen.
did. Thanks, man. Good to see you, buddy.
Appreciate you, pal. Later, guys.